So sometimes you get pages in that that reading them out publicly makes you feel very well. In my case, makes you feel very, I guess, white. Um, I mean, well. Hello, my screenwriting friends, and welcome to another episode of The Feedback Loop. This is the free weekly deep dive screenwriting feedback session where each week we look at the first 3 pages of a different writer's script and we review them word by word, page by page from the producer's perspective to point out what's working, what's maybe not working, and we have the writer on the call with us to discuss their intentions and what they're going for. So if something's not working, we can help them to hopefully make it work. Land a little bit more effectively and the way that they want it to land. If you haven't watched any of these yet, my name is Jeff Ballo. I spent many years teaching screenwriting from the producer's perspective, simply because I, as an independent producer based out of Sydney, Australia, could not find material to produce. So I had to do something, and the goal was to try to help writers come up, take those great ideas they've come up with and turn them into not just screenplays, but actually viable screenplays that independent producers, people like me, could actually say yes to. If you've been watching the show this whole time and you're actually here with us on episode 10 after watching the first 9, you know that spiel, you're over it, you're bored with that, so let's move on as quickly as possible, shall we? Today's pages were originally submitted as a comedy, but as it turns out, after talking with the writer, they're actually the pilot for a sitcom. So the pages today come from a writer out of Pennsylvania in the United States, a writer by the name of Kay Wallace. Kay has written a script called Big Time that she calls a comedy, but which is actually a sitcom pilot. So Kay is on the call with us. I think after we are talking about the script itself, the script does center around some African-American characters, and I'm kind of like the whitest white guy that's going to possibly read these pages. So it might be a little awkward, a little embarrassing, but hopefully you understand that what I'm going for and what the objective is, and we're all friends, and we want to make sure we get Kay to where she wants to go. So it's a little cringy sometimes, but it's a bit fun. Once we finish with Kay, we're going to look at the first 3 pages of a familiar script, as we always do. Today, we're going to look at the first 3 pages from the screenplay for Swingers. This is an early or mid-90s comedy about a couple of guys, and so there's sort of a parallel between the comedies and how you can introduce characters effectively, and I thought that would be a really nice way to highlight some of the points and ideas that we will be talking with Kay about for her project. So in the end, the first page for Swingers is probably something you're just not going to do anymore today. These days, that kind of screenwriting is not really in vogue. So we're going to read the first 4 pages of Swingers, and hopefully I will be able to successfully explain to you why we do things a little bit differently. So take that into consideration. Remember, this is a deep dive, so grab yourself something to drink, some comfortable cushion to sit on to keep that butt happy. Grab something to take some notes with and enjoy, because this is a pretty good session if I do say so myself. Kay is absolutely fantastic, and so let's get to her pages now. Enjoy the session. Exterior residential neighborhood evening. Nice neighborhood with large homes and well-manicured lawns. The guys, Art, Howie, and Cab, mid to late 20s, African-American, leave a home and walk to exterior the Coffeeholic evening. One house, spaced a good distance from the other houses on the street, has been converted into a coffee shop and bar. Nice weather allows its large picture windows to be left open. The guys go interior the Coffeeholic evening. A few dozen patrons, including the guys, chat at small tables in a large, comfortable room. A few more customers are seated at the long bar. Howie, this is a cool little hang. Art, Yeah, it is. Hot ladies, cheap beer. He and Howie bump fists. Art to Cab. You feel me? Cab. We're here on business. It'll be a cool hang once we get that done. Howie. You're pushing your luck, man. We've got a good balance now. Art. Exactly. You're pushing our luck. Cab. I don't want to have to raise your rent. Howie is taken aback by the statement. Cab. Yeah, see, how it works is I divide the mortgage among us. Art. We got it. We're just saying. Cab. What? A group of cute young girls enter. Art. This place is the bomb. He clinks his glass with Howie. Cab. Then you should have posted something here for a new roommate. There are too many jagoffs online. Art. I'm on loving.com. Howie. You can't run from jagoffs. Cab. I don't run from anyone. Art. You need a profile on Loving. Cab with a scoff. I like to meet women where they are. A bar, the grocery store. Howie. The cemetery. Art and Cab give looks of what? Howie. After a funeral when they need a shoulder to cry on. Beat. They're vulnerable and open. Beat. If I know the deceased, I'm too broken up too, but if I don't, it's on. Cab. Beat. Art, who you got me living with, man? Art. He's good people, trust me. Beat. Cab. I'd tell anyone to live in the tiniest place over living with people they don't know, but here I am living with guys I don't know. They finish their drinks. Cab. I'll get the next round. At the bar, a television mounted above the bar shows video game avatars boxing in a ring. Ava Lois, 50s, a formidable woman, makes drinks for patrons. Ben, 30s, and a few friends wait for her attention. Ben to Eva. Beer, nothing imported. Eva, I got you. Listen, there aren't enough teams for the tournament. We might cancel. Ben, no, I got people coming to see me whip these fools. Cab, excuse me, can I get another round? Eva, sure. To Ben, nobody signed up. Ben, it's called promotion, Eva. Watch this. To Cab, hey man, there's a boxing tournament going on this weekend. All players get free drinks at happy hour. Eva, first round only. Okay, so these are the pages that we're going to discuss today. Now, having a look through these initially myself, my first thoughts are, this is being pitched as a sitcom, so I'm not sure if that's intended to be, and we'll talk to Kay in just a moment, but I'm not sure if that's intended to be sort of a multi-camera sitcom, sort of like a Cheers kind of a thing, or something, a Roseanne kind of thing where you're filmed in front of a live studio audience, or if it's supposed to be a single camera thing. I initially would have thought a single camera thing based on how it's initially set up here, but then we're in this one spot, so it could sort of go either way. If it's a sitcom for a multi-camera, you're gonna want it to be much more punchliney. You're gonna want it to be more setup, payoff jokes. Imagine the laugh track throughout, where we have gags and we have funny things. There are situations here that I'm assuming have sort of social humor in them, but it's not sort of resonating with me too much as funny. So as a comedy, the challenge that we have is right off the bat, we need to make sure that everything is funny, right? So if it's pitched as a comedy. Now, we have this typical problem where we introduce multiple different characters all on the same page, and there's no real way to distinguish between them initially. So generally when we set up this kind of a situation, I think I know what Kay's going for here, but generally when we set up this kind of a situation, we're really going to want to start with some specific comedic situation right off the bat. We have the drama of we need to find a new roommate, where the roommate's coming from, etc., and then the bits of sort of humorous interaction here and there, but we don't really have a comedic premise to launch the episode itself. You're trying to introduce these different characters and maybe introduce the world and the milieu that we're going to be set in, which is this bar. But we also, on top of that, really want to make sure that we have an initial comedic situation or scene or scenario that is going to sort of act as the framework that pulls us into the comedy of meeting these people in this situation, in this setting. So, so let me get Kay on and we can talk a little bit more about it. Overall, there's one sentence here that really stumped me, which was a few dozen patrons, including the guys chat at small table. There's like a comma missing or something about the sentence is really sort of awkward, so I stumbled over it 3 times. When you have they leave home and walk to, make sure there's a colon at the end here, because I don't know if you lost a sentence or what. So give me some punctuation to know that we're using that technique. And then other than that, it's mostly the sort of setup situation. So let's bring Kay on, and we'll talk to Kay about what she's aiming for and how we can see if we can punch it up a bit with her. So, Kay,
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Fine. How does it feel to have the most awkward, unfunny guy read your comedy script?
I thought it was, I thought you were good, but
Oh.
I'm surprised that the pages weren't a little bit better.
Okay, so did you see in it when I was reading it, like, were you starting to see it in a different way? Like, did you notice things that maybe you didn't notice before you sent it out?
Yes, I mean, I intended as a comedy, as a, like Friends or Roseanne or something. So I wanted it to be funny right away. And,
okay. Okay, so tell me again what the sort of intended overall show scenario is going to be.
And these are young men in their mid to late 20s who kind of wish they had a group to live with. And the one guy, Cab, had a love, and he was wanting to live with her. So he bought a big house, and she didn't show up. So he decided to get roommates and split the mortgage. And they're all trying to get to know each other. And what's supposed to happen is in every episode, they're supposed to have some kind of big event or something that tries their patience and their tolerance for each other. And by the end of it, they're not just friends, they're becoming brothers.
Right. Okay. So, but they don't start off that way, right? They start off as
they
just
don't know
roommates,
each other,
more or
and
less.
they're a little bit like, wait, who are you and what are your values? And so those are the kinds of issues.
Okay, so just as a what would you say? So every sort of great sitcom tends to center around a space, right? So Friends would be, the apartment, or Cheers would be the bar, or Roseanne would be her house, or we can pick one, right? So is yours going to be this coffee-holic place, or is it going to be their house? Or, like, what do you think?
I would like it to be their house. By the end of the episode, they have 2 new roommates. So it's 5 guys in a house.
Okay, so if you think about the logistics of just producing a multi-camera show, right? The multi-camera show is I don't know if you've ever been to a taping for a multi-camera show, but they basically have the main set, and then they have the audience facing the main set. And then if there are other scenes with other sets, they're sort of off on the side, right? They're sort of these fly-out sets that sometimes get built just for that shot or whatever. So if this location is going to be your central location or your secondary location, they might have sort of, be adjacent or whatever. But when you're establishing your show, and this doesn't have to be the case, but when you're establishing your show and we don't know who these characters are, what you really want to do is dump us right into the main thing right away that we're going to hook into on your show. Does that make sense?
Okay.
So part of the challenge is we don't know these characters, and so if you want to have a scene like this, so the goal of this scene obviously is to get to know the guys, right? And talk about the underlying conflict of the rent.
Right.
Is that sort of is there something more that I'm not noticing about it?
No, it's supposed to be fun. And I'm just trying to show who the guys are.
Okay.
kind of demonstrate their personalities a little bit.
Because I think what you're probably going to want to try to do is feature them all in some way. Like right now, you know Cab and you know that backstory you just told me. Uh,
Hmm.
we don't know that, and we don't really have a way to know that. Now, it's you don't want to sort of like say, "Here's Cab, and here's what his deal is," right? But
Right.
you're right. Your instinct is right to reveal it as you go along, but it's not really being we're not really seeing distinct characters right off the bat. Do you know what I mean?
Hmm. Okay.
You're throwing us into a world with these three guys, and I'm because I don't know who's who. When this guy says this is a cool little hang, um, and then this guy goes, yeah, it is hot lady's cheap beer. It's like I don't know who these guys are, so I don't know if this is funny the way he does it, or
Hmm.
um, and I don't know what I'm learning about them through that line, right? Or through
Hmm.
this initial exchange. Because it's kind of like two maybe childish guys out looking for girls. Is that it? Like, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
And they're just coming into responsibilities of manhood. I think they left their families. Howie and Art left maybe their homes, and so now they're paying rent and they're on their own. They have to find lives for themselves.
okay, but you establish them as mid to late 20s, right? So mid
Hmm.
to late 20s, to my thinking, is you've probably already had the initial like
Okay.
school age thing, right? Like,
Hmm.
so they're behaving a little school aged, if you know what I mean. Like maybe
Okay.
like if they were university students, then I guess the scenario makes a little more sense to me. But because we've started off their mid to late 20s, I'm imagining slightly older people. So
Okay. I was thinking maybe Cab was late 20s and the other two were maybe 22,
uh,
23.
oh, I see. Okay, yeah. So you put Cab mid to late 20s, but you haven't indicated who Artie and Hal are,
Okay.
right? So
Uh-huh.
it's these little things, right? You always have to remember that when the reader's reading your script, they know nothing about the world that you're introducing them to, and every
Hmm.
little detail puts some idea in their head. Like, and if it's not the idea that you want to be in their head, then it could be an idea that's going to completely derail what you're trying to set up, or the situation that you're trying to write about. Do you know what I mean?
Hmm.
So, so we have that initially. What the scene itself makes sense to me, so I don't have I don't, it's not an issue of clarity. It's more an issue of comedy to me. Like what I guess I'd like to know from you what you see the comedy as here.
I thought it was funny that he was talking about meeting a woman at a cemetery, and the guys were like, "What?" They found that a little bit out, in poor taste, and so he tries to make up for it. He's trying to explain it. He's like, "I'm a good guy. I'm a good guy," and then finally, it's just like, "Yeah, no." But then in the end, Cab says, maybe this is a mistake, me living with people I don't know, and then goes and gets more alcohol for all three of them.
Okay,
So,
so
and,
what you've said now in talking to you makes this make a little more sense, right? Like this line here seems very random the first time you hear it or read it because it's like why is he having this aside to himself? Like we don't know that he's living with guys he does or that this is now a big thing for him. So we probably at the beginning would need to set up and maybe even a scene on the side or something setting up the situation, right? So
okay.
he's he's got to do it, or there's some sort of conflict about he can't pay his rent, so he's got to get guys in, right? Or whatever the decision was. Or now, when it comes to sitcom, it's got to be funny. I mean that goes without saying, right? But there are ways to set up a scene or a situation that are going to be funnier than just merely letting something play out. So if you have, one of the things I read, and I can't remember which, there's some teacher or book somewhere I read along the way, referred to it as the character's worst nightmare. So what you basically do is you keep throwing the character into a worse and worse and worse and worse nightmare. And in so doing, you're setting up it for more and more and more comedy, right? So we would need to know why this is a nightmare for him, or why this is we either need to see how he's responding to it in a funny way, or why this is such a nightmare scenario for him, right? And then we also need to see from the other two guys that they're bringing something different to the mix. You can bring a lot of comedy around having different points of opposition. So there's this one theory about 4-point opposition, I think it is, where like all great comedy is built on 4-point opposition, where you basically have 4 characters that have distinctly different points of view and ways of seeing the world and ways of dealing and interacting with the world. And because there are 4 distinctly different points of view, you can always build some sort of comedic conflict off of each of the ways they relate to each other. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's, yeah. You can obviously build that over the course of your show, but in order for the initial scenes to be funny, we need to have some sense of what those distinct points of view are going to be.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
So
I was thinking of this as like a standard sitcom, and I was thinking of the Howie characters, like the Dippy, Chrissy Snow from Three's Company character.
Okay.
Cav's going to be more serious.
Okay. And then what about Art?
Art is a student who keeps changing his major, and it's just staying in school, and so he's sort of in between. He wants to be more serious like Cav, but I think he still has a lot of childishness that you mentioned.
Okay, so when I used to do improv comedy a very long time ago, and one of the tenets of improv comedy is this idea of status, and you can pull humor out of having people with 2 different status levels, right? So one character is high status, one character is a low status, and so you can have a character present himself as being the man in charge, right? And then some line of dialogue or maybe some reality of a situation completely undercuts that status, and they drop down to a low status, right? So I would suggest that you sort of go through and look at the different characters and consider what's their status and what's their status in relation to one another as well. Because that's going to help you find the comedy. That's going to help you find the situations that are funny out of it, right? And it's going to help you interact between them. So when he says, "I'm on loving.com," I didn't understand this bit. This place is the bomb. He clinks glasses. Then you should have posted something here for a new roommate. There are too many jagoffs online. I'm on loving.com. I don't get that. What was it? What does that mean?
Okay. Basically, like he's on a dating site, and he's saying it's okay to post things online. I date online, so it's okay to go to roommates.com to get a roommate, because he goes and gets dates online. And Cav is saying a jagoff. A jagoff is a Pittsburgh, phrase, I think.
I know we have it. We have it in LA too.
Okay.
Some people say jagoff. Some people say jerk-offs.
Right.
Same word, same phrase.
Right. So that's supposed to be the joke there.
Right. That it's
that he says jagoffs, and that he's saying it's okay to go online to find people. They won't necessarily be crazy. And then they come up with Howie comes up with the suggestion of meeting someone at a cemetery. I thought that whole bit could be funny, and it's not. I see.
No, I don't think I don't the cemetery bit. I don't have a problem with. There's a whole movie built around it, which is Wedding Crashers. But the because they have this one scene where there's a funeral crash, I think, in that scene as well. So it's kind of this bit, but but there's that part is fine. But by the challenge is, this is, if we scroll out, the bit with the cemetery is at the bottom of page 2. So in theory, by this point, if you're thinking in terms of a comedy, you probably want to have 1 to 3 solid laughs on each page, I would say, right? So, and you can do that many different ways. You can do that with how you set it up. You can do that with the language that you use in the description. You can introduce someone in a funny way. So there's a sight gag with, it doesn't have to be, a pratfall into the room or something like that. But you can probably find a way that he's fiddling with something, or something that comes out of his character is funny, right? So if you go ahead.
No, I'm listening.
Well, so I was going to say, if you're able to introduce each of the characters in some sort of funny way, to where we set up the situation, then this will probably land better, right? So the joke will be funnier if we have a relation to Howie already, right? Like if we know he's kind of weird, or there's another one of those Howie things, right? Like, but right now it sort of comes out of left field, and the reason it's not really resonating for me anyway is because I don't know who any of the 3 guys are. That I think is the biggest challenge here, and that is because they're not really introduced. There's not even Cab is described in his own way. Like, I don't have a picture of what these 3 guys are,
Okay.
If I had that picture, or you can even set that picture up right before he says something, right? So is he doing something physically funny, or is he doing something in a quirky way? And then the line juxtaposes against the quirkiness, and that's how we reveal who this guy is, right? What his character is. But the dialogue as it is kind of, straightforward, just guy talking, more or less. And it's like there's nothing wrong with it per se, but it doesn't. I'm not sure that it's tapping into the humor that you're going for.
The Howie character is always trying to be cooler and more sort of Jay-Z hip hop than he really knows how to be. So,
Howie?
The Howie character.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I mean, is it over the top to have him like wearing some bling or something? I don't know.
Oh, that's okay. I could describe that.
But do you see what I mean? Like, but if it's like something ridiculous, like a wannabe Flavor Flav clock or something, like, you know what I mean? If it's something silly or something that could be funny, then there's sort of then we go, okay, I get a sense of who this is. Now, maybe that's a little buffoonish for him initially, but it helps us to understand maybe the context of where it is. We can flesh out the nuance of the character as it goes along, right?
I get it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, but it's just like those little kinds of clues that you might need to, to give us some context. Because, and this is true of comedies and dramas and all the scripts that I read. One of the biggest problems that I had for many years was, and still today, but I figured it out what the problem was after reading enough scripts, is that you'd read a script and the writers would sort of just would say the name of the character, and then there'd be this dialogue scene, and it'd be like, and the analogy that I came up with was, all I'm seeing are 2 shadow people talking to each other, because you haven't given me a picture of what they are yet. And if it's just 2 shadow people talking, I don't know which one of them is talking at a time, right? And and B, I'm not going to connect with what they're saying because I can't see them, right? Now, once we film this, obviously we have the 3 actors to look at. We instantly know who's who. So some of this, if I don't know if you've done any table readings or you've had actors read this out with you.
No,
have you?
I haven't. Not yet. No.
Not yet. Okay. So, but if you do, if you go find some local actors or whoever and they read it out, the thing that you're going to find is that people are going to bring something to it. Right? So they'll find something funny in it, or they'll create some little piece of business or whatever it is, and they'll make it seem funnier than it is on the page, which can be deceiving to you as a writer. So when you go out and you get actors to do that stuff, be careful, because actors will bring stuff to it, and then they'll make you think your script is funnier or more solid than it is. One of the reasons I tried to read this kind of deadpan and kind of boring and not really go for the jokes very much is because that's how a blind reader is going to be reading it. Someone who doesn't know anything about your project, right?
Right.
So that's who you're writing for. That's who you have to paint that picture for.
Okay, I really got that about the shadow people talking. That really works for me.
Okay, good. Good, because and again, it's not just the opening scenes either. You can think about that at any point through the script. One of the great challenges for writers to understand is that all you have are words on the page, and what you need those words to do is put pictures in my head. It's not enough to put ideas in my head. It's not enough to put concepts or narrative or good dialogue in my head. I need to see pictures, because I need to see the show or the movie or the whatever it is, right? So with your language, make sure it's clear and pictures. There are some of the way you've described it. One house spaced a good distance from other houses on the street. Kind of awkward language, right? Has been converted into a coffee shop and bar. Okay, I can picture that once I finish that sentence, but the way the sentence is, you're showing me a house, and then you're taking me out of that idea and going spaced a good distance from other houses. I'm not sure why that's relevant. Has been converted into a coffee shop, right? So one of the neighborhood houses has been converted into a coffee shop, right? That's all you need. Like that paints a picture. If you were to have one little word of description in there, maybe like with a big awning or something like that, like I'm going to see that picture more clearly, right? So nice weather allows its large picture windows to be left open. That's actually a nice image. It's again one of those kind of clunky sentences where it's like, I know what you're saying, but you're incorporating too many. I don't know how many of these feedback loop sessions you've watched, but this is a recurring theme here. But it's like too many ideas in one sentence, right? So it's not. For it to be clear, it's like this picture. When you say nice weather allows, we don't think of weather as allowing something, right? Like we do if we're brainiacs and we're thinking too much, but like I don't say, "Hey rain, allow me to get wet today," So you got to be careful with the language like that, because you're painting that picture. This picture is a nice picture, right? Having the picture windows open to take in the beautiful day. Cool, that's a nice image. So we want to make sure that the language of the script is putting that image in our head. Now, that's the descriptive part, but the same goes for your characters. And the same goes for when you're introducing somebody, and the same goes for when something happens within the scene. Yeah?
Yes.
So, in the end, there are basically sort of layers of things to focus on with all this. This bit I'm assuming this is going to set up what the drama is going to. I'm assuming Eva and maybe even Ben are going to be regular characters here.
When they're in the bar, but I don't see the bar as being a major thing in the whole series. It's. I was thinking of it like Central Perks and Friends. They'll go there on occasion. Okay,
I see. So, okay, if you're using the Friends model, right? So the way Friends was actually set up I don't remember it, so it may be completely totally different to what I'm about to say. But the if you were going to be setting up Friends, what you would want to do is have a scene where all the friends come together for some things happening, some comedic situation or something that is going to highlight who the characters are so that we can meet these characters and then and send us into an unfolding nightmare scenario that they're going to comedically do, right?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Now I don't know if that's what your show's supposed to be. Maybe it's a lot more like, chill and conversations, and it's not. Maybe you're not going for the high comedy, but that's all. That's why it all depends on what you're aiming for, what you're trying to achieve with it.
My natural tendency is for drama and to make it sad and then turn funny, but I was going for high comedy on this. So my intention is to shift that natural tendency a little bit and just try to be funny. And I think I see a way I can do it.
Okay, cool. So if you're going for high comedy, you definitely want to make sure that the plot is funny. Like there is inherent comedy in whatever the situation is. So, for example, if your situation is just these guys need to find a roommate, what's the narrative of this first episode, if you don't mind telling me?
These guys who don't know each other that well need to find a roommate. They go to a bar to do that, but when they're at the bar, they're pulled into a video game competition where they're standing up and boxing. Like an Xbox game. Right. And they're into a boxing competition and they have to form teams and try to get along with other people at the bar. That's where the humor comes from, the actual boxing competition that they do.
Okay. So if you don't mind me asking, why do you want the first episode to be that? That sounds like a third or fifth episode kind of plot to me.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it's not until we know who these characters are that situation you're describing can be its potential of funny. Do you know what I mean?
Okay. Mm-hmm. Sure. I'll have to work up a pilot.
Well, I mean, I'm not telling you what to do. All I'm saying is,
I know.
My point is that particularly on a pilot, what you're going to want to do is introduce us to the characters and the situation. And if you are going for high comedy, you're going to want that situation to be the thing that brings them together. So maybe at the beginning of the show they're not, and then at the end of the show they're together tentatively. One of them's half out the door, whatever it is, right? But make sure the situation itself is something that's funny and gets more and more nightmare as it goes along, right? Okay. That's going to help you draw the comedy out and help us understand who the characters are, more so than a sort of random side story. Yeah, like you're telling me that we're not actually going to spend most of our shows in this bar.
Right.
So that's why I say it feels like a third or fifth episode or something, right? It feels like once we know these guys and once we know their little, peculiarities and their inner sort of foibles and their interactions with each other, then throw them into this kind of a situation where you have this, now we've got to do this, and the one of them hates sports of all kinds or whatever, right? Then that situation makes more sense, because what's going to happen is, if this is your pilot, I'm going to assume that these people at the bar are regular characters. I'm going to assume that this is going to be the center of the place.
Okay.
Does it make sense?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
So in general, that's kind of the sort of overall way to understand it, is that if I don't know anything about your story, whatever you give me is what I'm going to assume it's about. And so everything gets judged from that standpoint. So it's like, if that's what it's about, well, it doesn't quite hit that, right? So if it's about something else, Well, then you need to make it about that so that we can determine if you hit or don't hit that target.
Okay.
Yeah?
Yes. And I'll just say that in this episode, they meet a guy they like, and he says no, he doesn't want to live with them. And they finally get the fourth roommate that they're looking for, and then he changes his mind. So that's supposed to be a funny hook, too.
Okay, so you have all that in this first episode.
Yes.
So, okay, so how much of your first episode is devoted to the video game thing? It's a subplot, basically.
It's a subplot, but it's right, and at the center. It's a subplot at the center.
Okay. Because if it's just a sort of throwaway subplot, that's not necessarily a problem. And so this is why giving feedback's always a little tricky, because there's literally a million things we can talk about here. And depending on what you want to do, kind of changes what the advice or recommendation would be. So if this is just a small subplot, right, or a funny recurring gag or something like that, but the bulk of the show is about what you just described, where they're getting a fourth person and they all like him, and then he says no, and they all go, and then they, struggle. Maybe that's the end of that episode, or maybe they struggle to get somebody else, and then as soon as they do, this guy wants back in.
Right.
Then there's that dilemma. So that's more like what a pilot should be, right? So then the advice would be, maybe don't pop this here on page 3. Like, spend time setting up the situation and getting to know these characters, and make it about these guys. More just, this is as funny as this may be, this is kind of really just chit chat, right? You're in some ways missing an opportunity to actually go deeper and reveal character here. So if what they're talking about ultimately reveals who they are, then we get to know them better. That's what you really want to set up at the beginning. So if we could establish I almost feel like you kind of at the beginning need to establish why they need a roommate. You mentioned, and you don't have to take, I don't know enough about it to actually have proper story development advice for you. I'm talking in generalities, but if it started off with what you were telling me earlier, where he breaks up with his girl and now he's going to be on his own, was that?
Yes.
Something like that. Yes. So if we had that at the beginning, and he's got 2 of his friends around, and then they're like, don't worry about it, it'll be fine, right? And then it's like, we could come live with you, you got a nice pad or whatever it is, right? Then you could sort of set up that situation. Oh crap, but we're not going to be able to pay the rent because we don't have a fourth, and then we need to go look for the fourth. I don't know that that's the right choice for you, and don't go by my story suggestions, since I don't know all the details. But that's the kind of thing that I think is going to help you set up this situation. That's what you need to do. You need to set it up more so that when we go, so that we know what we're in for. The pilot really has to sort of make us want to come back and watch the show each week.
Right. Okay. Yes.
What do you think about all that?
I think it's great advice. It's a little discouraging because I thought this was really going to be funny. I thought you were going to fall over laughing.
I may be thick. It's not, you can't just go by me. So I will recommend to you, by the way, and I recommend this to the people that do my system and all that, like it's one thing I'm really, really big on is table reads. So it's important to get people together to read out your project. If you're doing comedy, it's especially important because you need to know that the things are funny. Comedy is a tricky beast because comedy either is going to work and it's going to get a laugh, or it's going to sit there and you're going to go, oh no, I'm just going to go, right? Like, I don't think yours does that. So I I don't, and I might not be the right demographic or the right audience that you're targeting either necessarily. So, but I don't know. It's hard for me to judge whether your comedy's landing the way you want it to land or not. To me, probably not. But don't be discouraged by that. Instead, understand the underpinnings of how to strengthen the comedy, right? Because if you ever, this is kind of like a general rule of thumb for any sort of advice or feedback that anybody's ever going to get anywhere. If you get feedback that is not what you wanted to hear or makes you think, oh crap, I didn't nail it the way that I wanted to nail it, that, in my opinion, is the very best thing that you could possibly get, because it shines a light on where something is ineffective. So I have this saying. I like to say there is no such thing as good or bad in creativity. There is only effective or ineffective. Because if you change your language, instead of saying that was terrible, that was bad, I watched this movie, it was awful. Instead of saying those things, go, yeah, that was ineffective. What happens is your brain immediately goes, ineffective how? Right? And because it goes ineffective how, your brain immediately starts looking for, well, what could happen to make it more effective? What could be done? What could be done to get it where it's trying to go? And if you focus your brain on that, there's no bad feedback, right? There's no, if something doesn't land, well, I thought that was going to land. Why didn't that land? Oh, they didn't get this. Or, oh, I didn't set this up quite right. Or, oh, this is funny to me because of this thing that I remember in my life, but other people don't have that in their lives, so it's not universally funny, or whatever it might be, right? You're going to end up, if you're open to whatever feedback you get, you're going to be given basically the keys to making it better. So never be afraid of bad feedback. If you're writing a comedy, never be afraid of a room that does not laugh.
Okay.
You'll learn more from it than anything else. Let me see. I got a question here from Patrick. Says, what if Howie places an ad in a roommate share website expecting a hot woman? A dude turns up instead, and Howie has to accept him because he's desperate. I don't know if that helps you.
I'll think about it.
What's that?
I'll think about it.
Yeah. I mean, look, at the end of the day, you have to tell the story you want to tell, and you have to tell it in your way. So whatever someone like me or anyone else who reads it suggests, it's all going to be from our vantage point as well. So just because I say something, don't necessarily run out and go do that. What I want you to understand more than anything are the principles and the ideas at work, right? And
yes,
if we focus on that, the main problems I have with this are that it's not set up in a way to where I understand who these three guys are, why I care about them, and why I love them and want to keep coming back and watching them each week. You know what I mean? That's the most important thing, I would say, on the first 3 pages of your comedy or sitcom project. In addition to, it has to be funny, right? Like, give me a laugh on every page. And the challenge with the comedy is it's not good enough to have someone reading your script and going, oh, that's funny. Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, that's funny. They have to go read it and go, ha, ha. They have to laugh out loud, right? Okay. So if they don't laugh out loud, they're probably not going to recommend the script. And if they do laugh out loud, you're probably not going to be able to stop them from recommending the script. So, yeah. Anyway, do you have any other questions or things that I've missed or anything specific you wanted to ask about?
No, I think you covered it. Gave me a lot of ideas for rewriting. Okay.
How long have you been at it?
Well, I worked on this last year, and I think it took me about 6 months, and then I put it down. I've been working on some other things, so I may have some other pages, other stories to submit.
Okay. No, the reason I was asking is just to get a sense of how long you've been developing it, and how I think people I'm not saying you, but I know that other people will be watching this, and I think a lot of people often will underestimate what's involved in creating good comedy. That it's if they're a funny person, they just, you know, bang out some funny pages, and there are dynamics involved, and
Right.
and story is absolutely essential in making a comedy come to life. So hopefully you know that.
Yes, I think so. I can mention one thing that might be funny a little later in this script if you want to hear it. If not, that's
Yeah,
okay.
sure, go for it.
Well, so Cab is supposed to be set up as kind of a more serious guy, and they get into this boxing competition. One of the things that happens is they get into it thinking about guys, and when it's his turn to box someone, his opponent is a woman, so he has to deal with that. And so I don't know, I thought that could be funny.
It's
But
a
you're right, that it's like you read it and like, yeah, that could be funny, and that's not going to do
Well,
it.
so okay, my initial reaction is that's a potentially funny scenario. And then if you're writing comedy, what you need to make sure you find within that scenario are the funny details, the funny moments, the funny I didn't expect her to do that, or you know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
and you have to present it on the page in a way that when I read it, it surprises me because comedy is all about the surprise. Comedy is
Hmm.
all about we're imagining it to go one way and then it twists. It throws us a left turn, right? So
Hmm.
as you in your writing, it has to be presented that way. Like it has to surprise us in the actual words on the page
Okay.
in addition to the content of the scene. You know what I mean?
Hmm. Hmm.
So I agree that that's a potentially funny situation, but it's
Okay.
potentially funny because it kind of depends on what you do with it. You know what I mean?
Okay. Hmm.
Yeah. Cool. Well,
Okay.
thanks
Great.
so much for sharing your pages. I always enjoy comedy, and I and I know it's hard when when you're expecting me to laugh and I'm sort of not slapping my knee or anything, but there's a lot of potential here, and I don't want to underestimate that. So keep up the good work. All right.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
All right. Thanks, Kay. Does that make sense to everybody else? Anybody have any specific questions about that? Is anybody else writing comedy out there? What do you think? What's the general reaction? Is it me? Was it funnier than I read or imagined? What do you guys think? I'm not seeing anything. I'm not seeing much in the comments regarding that, but Matt says, I've never dared to attempt comedy. And that's actually true. There's a lot of comedians will tell you comedy is harder than drama. Comedy is harder than drama. So, because drama, you can get away with just sort of smoothing over things. The challenge with comedy is it has to generate a laugh or it hangs there, right? So, comedy is definitely, unless you're just a naturally, instinctively, intuitively funny person, and I've met many of those over the years, unless you're that, there is it helps to understand the dynamics underneath comedy, and it helps to understand how to make something funny. The other thing that I wanted to do today that was read some pages from an existing script out there. Now, the pages that I've chosen for this session are the first four, actually, pages from Swingers, which is the movie that sort of made Vince Vaughn a name, and Jon Favreau, who went on to be a major director and actor as well. He was on Friends, in fact, since we were talking about Friends. But if you haven't seen Swingers, it's very much a product of its time, and it's very funny. It was something that my friends and I could very much relate to at the time because we were sort of that age and that demographic, and it just sort of spoke to us as Hollywood people. The thing about the first page of this is the first page of Swingers is description. What it's basically describing is the opening credits imagery. Now, generally speaking, we don't do that. The reason we don't do that is, generally speaking, the opening credits are done by a second unit director, or the opening credits are done separate to the main production. Oftentimes we'll have credits that where the narrative is starting underneath the credits, but we don't talk about the credits. Don't put opening titles or titles end or all this kind of stuff. That's generally not something you're going to want to do in a spec screenplay. So that's the way this one starts. So let me read it to you, but that's why I'm going to read 4 pages, because the first 3 pages are sort of the after the first page. So let's have a look at the first 3 pages from Swingers. Exterior Hollywood night. The soundtrack opens with Frank Sinatra's Fly Me to the Moon, a helicopter shot of the LA basin. The pool of golden light disintegrates into the thousands of points which constitute it as we rapidly draw closer to the city. We are just above the tops of the highest buildings as we approach Hollywood Boulevard. Below is neon and the icy thrust of searchlights rotating on the corner of Hollywood and Vine. We continue west, then quickly north. There is the momentary appearance of the moonlit Hollywood sign as we pass the blinking red beacon of the Capitol Records building and drop into Franklin Avenue over the 101. Architectural remnants of Hollywood's past whip up. We are heading east at treetop level. A warm glow in the distance quickly grows into a modest commercial strip, which includes cafes, bookstores, and a theater. We drop to eye level as we spy through the plate glass showcase window of the Bourgeois Pig Coffee House, which holds the translucent reflection of the full moon. A cigarette wedged between knuckles smolders. Mike takes the last drag with great effort, then crushes it out. He sits in the window, sprawled across a red velvet couch that once perfectly complemented a faux Spanish foyer. Match cut 2. Exterior Bourgeois Pig Coffee House, couches and table in front window, night. Rob sits down next to Mike, pouring himself some tea. Mike: what if I don't want to give up on her? Rob: you don't call. Mike: but you said I shouldn't call if I wanted to give up on her. Rob: right. Mike: so I don't call either way. Rob: right. Mike: so what's the difference? Rob: the only difference between giving up and not giving up is if you take her back when she wants to come back. See, you can't do anything to make her want to come back. You can only do things to make her not want to come back. Mike: so the only difference is if I forget about her or pretend to forget about her. Rob: right. Mike: well, that sucks. Rob: it sucks. Mike: so it's almost a retroactive decision. So I could, like, let's say, forget about her, and when she comes back, make like I just pretended to forget about her. Rob: right. Or more likely the opposite. Mike: right. Wait, what do you mean? Rob: I mean, first you'll pretend not to care, not call, whatever, and then eventually you really won't care. Mike: unless she comes back first. Rob: see, that's the thing. Somehow they don't come back until you really don't care anymore. Mike: there's the rub. Rob: there's the rub. Mike: thanks, man. Sorry we always talk about the same thing all the time. Rob: hey, man, don't sweat it. Mike: it's just that you've been there. Your advice really helps. Rob: no problem. Mike: Rob, I just want you to know you're the only one I can talk to about her. Rob: thanks, man. Dissolve 2. Interior Mike's apartment, night. Close up on answering machine. Mike pushes the button. Answering machine, synthesized voice. Hello, you have 5 messages. Mike's eyes light up. He paces in anticipation as the tape rewinds. Answering machine, continued. Male voice. Hey, baby, it's Trent. I hope you're feeling better about your old girlfriend. I hope my advice helped. Mike fast forwards to the next message. Answering machine, synthesized voice. Skipping message. Male voice. What's up, Mike? If you want to talk some more about Michelle, synthesized voice. Skipping message. Female voice. Mike, it's Chris. Feeling better yet about synthesized voice. Skipping message. Tension grows with every inch of spooling tape. Did she leave a message? Answering machine. Female voice. Hi, Mike. Did she call yet? If she didn't, then she doesn't deserve... Synthesized voice. Skipping message. The last one. It's a long shot, but he's got the faith. Answering machine. Elderly female voice. Michael, this is Grandma. I want to know if you got the part on that television program. I told the whole family, and they're very excited to know if... Synthesized voice. Skipping message. End of final message. Mike, lighting a cigarette, deflated. Shit. Answering machine. Synthesized voice. You have to put things in perspective. So one of the reasons I wanted to highlight this was if we take off that first page, because this is good for setting it up, but it really has nothing to do with what comes next. You wouldn't necessarily need this. You might have just a quick little, this much of it, and then you're into whatever the scene is. Because the opening scene here establishes the character, establishes the situation, sets up what he's going through. We already know he's a little bit of a sad sack. We already know that he's getting his advice from his friend Rob. The advice is kind of bro advice, and this is back in the 90s before bro was kind of a thing, really. But he's getting that kind of advice, which is kind of dumb advice, but kind of makes sense on its own level. And it's a really simple, nice interplay that is funny dialogue. It's not laugh out loud, slap your knees funny, but there are some funny bits in there, right? Or more likely the opposite, right? When she comes back, I make like I pretended to forget her. Or more likely the opposite. That's funny. So it's those kinds of little moments that are setting up the situation, setting up the conflict between the character and his world and what's going on. Now the great thing that's here is he goes, I just want you to know you're the only one I can talk to about her. Thanks, man. You have 5 messages. They're literally all about, I hope you're feeling better. I hope you took my advice. All that sort of thing, right? And then they go into this funny bit that happens at the end of this where he has this conversation with this answering machine that says, it's sort of a fantasy sequence. You have to put things into perspective. And what's great about this as a setup is that it's setting up the character right away. We don't really know where this movie's going to go, what this movie's going to be about, but we know it's going to be about Mike trying to get over his breakup, or maybe trying to get back together with her, or just kind of dealing with it, right? So that's the setup that's happening on these pages. So with any comedy story, we always want to make sure that we introduce the characters first, we put them in some sort of funny situation, and we pull comedy out of whatever pathos they're going through. The fact that he's talking to everybody about it and probably thanking each one, saying you're the only person I can talk to. That's where the answering machine thing comes from. It's being generated sort of organically out of his situation. So hopefully that makes sense. I think this is a very funny movie. Haven't seen it in years, so I have no idea how it holds up, but I'm assuming it holds up on some level. So so today we're sort of talking about comedy and about setups and about how we go about creating this kind of a situation. I guess the takeaway that I always want to sort of point out at this point is that just always remember that screenwriter doesn't have the benefit of the actor. I've said this before, but when you see someone on the screen, you're looking at an actor. The human brain is hardwired to recognize and to connect with other faces. We're like a face pattern recognition machine. We can actually pick out a face that we recognize in a crowd of hundreds of people. We can pick out that one face that we recognize. That's how instinctive it is for our brain. So when we watch it, this is why movies are so powerful. We empathize with the character. We go sort of into the mind of the character because we're watching people go through scenes and situations, and we go in there intuitively. It's what we're built to do. On the page, we don't have the benefit of that nice magical shorthand, the face, right? We have the words. So we have to make sure that we paint the picture. We have to make sure that we create the scenario that helps us to understand what it is and why it's funny and why we want to continue forward. So I wrote a comedy pilot and got told by half the writing pals that I sent it to that they didn't find it funny at all. Brutal. They said I tried too hard to be funny rather than write funny plots situations. This is actually really a great point that Kieran brings up, which is comedy only works if the situation is funny. And if you think about any, I mean, you can think some of the extremes are a show like Seinfeld or something where they find themselves in a situation that is inherently preposterous or inherently silly or just very much the opposite of what the character wants to be doing in that situation. If you want to be doing this and every little thing pops up to make you more and more mad because you're not able to do that, there's comedy in that. But it's coming from the situation, and it's coming from knowing who the character is, and it's coming from knowing what their outlook is in general. So if you're trying to write comedy, you're trying to design comedy, start with the story, start with the premise and the situation. If you think of a show like Cheers, which Kay's show is going to be about these four guys primarily. So it's going to be this Friends or Cheers-esque kind of situation. Each of the episodes is about them getting into some issue or trouble, or someone has come into their calm little world and upended it somehow, or something has happened. That thing, if designed well, that thing highlights the comedic gap in each of the characters, right? So there's another idea for comedy, which is that you want a comedic gap in every one of your characters. The character thinks they're this, but really they're this. And so every time they behave like this, something happens to drop them down back to where they kind of are really, and that's funny. Watching that drop is there's comedy theory that says that's where the laughs come from. So what you want to do is set up the situations, and you want to set up you want to put them in situations or create scenarios where you're creating that gap that are going to necessarily have the character confront what they really are rather than what they think they are, or what they're pretending to be, or trying to be. If you think about comedies that have sort of, a person's putting on a mask of some sort to try to pretend that they're able to hobnob with the rich folks, and then they keep sort of, tripping over themselves, and they don't know the etiquette and whatever. The comedy comes out of that kind of a situation. Fawlty Towers, if you haven't seen Fawlty Towers, watch Fawlty Towers. It's sort of the quintessential comedy like that. But anyway, we can talk about all that. Fawlty Towers is written around situations. Oh, did you say that? Did you say that? I didn't notice that. I said Fawlty Towers, and then I looked down, and Patrick had said Fawlty Towers in the chat box. So there you go. Fawlty Towers is an excellent example. John Cleese from the 70s or 80s? That's 80s. No, that's 70s. I can't remember when Fawlty Towers was, but it was before my time. I'm not the target audience, but it's fun. I want to hang out with these people and see how they're going to talk about things. Kay, that's right. So with the Swingers page, she said, I want to hang out with these people in the Swingers script and see how they're going to talk about things. It's great, by the way. I think you'll like it whether you're part of the demo or not, because good comedy crosses demo. That's the other thing, really, honestly. But that's what you're going to want in your project, is you want to make sure that we love these guys and we want to hang out with these guys. And the only way we can do that is get to know them and know their foibles and like their foibles. If we laugh at someone, if we laugh at their foibles, we are endeared to them. It's one of the great secrets. I can't believe this is going into dating advice territory, but if you're single and you want to go out and date, make the other person laugh, and make the other person laugh at your own expense. You're going to endear them to you. When we stumble and fall, it's like this embarrassing thing in normal everyday life. We don't want to stumble and fall. But if you stumble and fall and then make a joke about it and show that you know what, whatever, it's okay. You will have endeared the people around you to you. So, so ultimately, if we can make people laugh, if we create situations where they're the lovable loser or they're just the funny person, we human beings naturally endear. We are naturally endeared towards people who are funny or to situations that are funny. So anyway, that's enough armchair psychiatry out of Jeff for one day. So anyway, hopefully this this little mini class in comedy has been helpful. Fernando says, is it more easy for the audience to deal with an uncomfortable topic through comedy or drama? For example, gay marriage, drug legalization, or some taboo of some sort. Well, one of the things that can often happen is if you take a sensitive topic and you address it, if you make a comedy around the uncomfortable topic, you can often show something the way that it is in a way that is more accessible to people who would otherwise not. I'm not wording myself very well, but if you the show that just pops to my mind because you said gay marriage is Will and Grace, for example. They have all sorts of gay-themed humor that a mainstream audience, if you just talk about some of these themes, you know, in places that are, you know, resistant to it, are, you know, they wouldn't even listen to some of these kind of conversations. But because it's done in this funny way, and it's because it's presented with a laugh, it's a way to get people talking or thinking or seeing a situation differently. I would even argue that a show like Will and Grace, you know, probably did more for gay rights and for the gay community than a lot of dramas out there, for sure, because it personalizes people that some people have never met or haven't been, you know, don't know and aren't familiar with. Often when something is taboo or something is us and them, it's because you don't know them, and so you don't personalize them. So comedy is a nice way to personalize people because, you know, we see the humor that crosses whatever that boundary might be. So I don't know that there's a better way to do it, Fernando. I don't know if it's more easy or less easy. I think it all depends on the story you tell and the characters that you've created to do that. But I certainly think the comedy holds enormous opportunity for social change or opening people's eyes to ideas that they're maybe not familiar with, because it's a non-threatening way to broach certain ideas or topics or areas of discussion. So I'm a huge fan of comedy for that reason. When I did improv comedy, I was probably not the funniest guy in the room, which is why I tended to. My thing tends to be more sci-fi, and sci-fi and comedy don't mix. Don't watch Spaceballs. But anyway, Derek, yeah, Patrick references Derek, the Ricky Gervais show. That's a great example of comedy and drama mixed together beautifully. That's a fantastic show, in my opinion. Comedy and satire can get a message across more powerfully than serious comments, says Colin. Colin's big comedy aficionado as well. And I agree. I think it's one of the challenges we have, I actually think, is that comedy isn't because it's funny. I think a lot of people don't perceive it to be as difficult or as challenging. Notice that comedies tend not to win Oscars, but yet comedy, I would argue, is harder than drama to do well. And it's that whole thing. I think Jerry Seinfeld says, you know, you put the joke out there and you get instant feedback. Either that worked or that didn't work. You know, from the laughter. It's there's no way to hide. There's no way to go, well, no, it was actually funny. It's like, well, proof is in the pudding, you know. So, you know, the fact that Oscars don't give an Oscar for best comedy, or that the comedies tend not to win the Oscars. There's this general perception that drama or the serious thing or the deep theme or whatever it is somehow better, more important, has more gravitas, whatever. I don't know that it's true, but as the important thing for our purposes in this discussion here is that you have to take into consideration how audiences respond to those different genres and let that help determine the choices you're going to make as well. If you want to say something serious and you want people to take it seriously, probably drama is going to be the more appropriate way to go, not because the message wouldn't get through more effectively in a comedy, not that it wouldn't break through some of those mental barriers, but simply because it could, but then it could be thrown away as a comedy. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not... If someone is deeply moved by some message in a drama, they're going to take it more seriously. Whereas if their minds are opened in a comedy, they might not take it so seriously, but their minds might be more open. So it's kind of depends on what we're going for. So this is a very long-winded way of me to say that as the writer, you need to know what you're going for. You need to know what your purpose is. What's the point of the story that you're telling? What are you trying to say? What are you trying to share? What do you want the audience to think and feel at the end of it? Because if you want their minds to be open, maybe you'll go with the comedy. But if you want them to remember and get out there and help us make change, maybe the drama is a better way to go. I don't know. There's no right or wrong. It's the beauty of creativity. We can do both. So anyway, holy crap, we went off on some crazy sidetracks there. Or did we? I don't know. Maybe we didn't. All the best stuff is on the comments here. So if you are watching a video of this later, join us live for an upcoming session of the Feedback Loop. Go to thefeedbackloop.co, where we will always have the registration link on the front page for the next live session. We do these every Tuesday at 3 p.m. Los Angeles time, live. And if you have pages that you want me to review, this show only exists from people like you submitting your pages to me so that I can review them and we can discuss them and see what we try to do. Go to thefeedbackloop.co/submit to do that. So other than that, thanks for joining me. Thanks for having some fun on the comedy episode that was not necessarily funny because Jeff's not that funny of a guy. Anyway, thanks for joining me. We'll see you next week on the Feedback Loop. Thanks for watching. And thank you again to Kay for being brave and sharing your work.